Welcome everyone to the Learn Tourism Talks webinar. Thanks so much for being here. I'm really grateful, as always, to have so many people joining me from around the United States and the world. Just a quick reminder, on Friday, I will send you a copy of the slide deck as well as the recording. You can put any questions that you have today in the Q&A or the chat, and I will be monitoring them as we go along. But I am really excited to introduce to you our guest for today, Richard Peterson. I'm going to let him give you the details about what he does, but I do just want to say that he does work that I think is really changing the face of tourism. And he's someone that I've been following and paying attention to since I joined the Learn Tourism team because he is one of our esteemed advisors. But I'm really excited for him to share, I think, some perspectives, especially on marketing that are really forward thinking and can be applied to any community, I feel, regardless of size and regardless of location. There are things that you're going to learn in this conversation. So, Richard, thanks so much for being here today, and I will let you take it away.
Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to meet you once more, Sarah, virtually. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending upon where you are in the world today. It is a global cultural tourism audience, and that's always very exciting. And along with this, allow me to introduce myself. I am Richard Peterson, and I'm coming to you live from downtown San Francisco, where it's a lovely spring day here in the city. And I am based here for many years, I think over 20 years now in the Bay Area. But the focus of today's call is really understand where cultural heritage tourism and the work that the U.S. Cultural Heritage Marketing Council does is relevant to this conversation overall. A little bit about myself. I've been in the industry for many decades and bring to the table really basically a perspective of having worked in cultural organizations and nonprofits, both in the museum sector, but also in the hospitality sector with destination marketing organizations such as Los Angeles and also Hilton Hotel Corporation, and doing this work both on a community level, a neighborhood level, but also on a state or national level. So we're going to have a really interesting conversation, and really that's what it's all about. We're going to move into this overall. So what is the U.S. Cultural Heritage Marketing Council that Sarah mentioned to you? Really, the work that we do is really focused on culture, community, and commerce. Culture really is understanding the culture of a destination, of a people, of a region, about the community itself. Really, what is the community comprised of? Where are they today? Where do they want to be? And how are they evolving? And what does that mean for commerce, for the creative economy? The collective arts, culture, heritage, and tourism experiences, which are really not only economic drivers, but a sense of well-being and community good for the residents that do call it home. So in that space, you can learn more about us at the U.S. Cultural Heritage Marketing Council at our website at USCHMC.com. Following all of the program today, you'll receive all this information from Sarah and the Learn Tourism team. So let's just dive in and really speak about this. As we're setting the stage for the conversation today, just set aside what you're working on, set aside the distractions that you have, because we're really going to be focusing on some really interesting topics and insights that I think that you'll find really important to your current work. But I also know that the poll was conducted from that perspective, where you are in the work that you're doing. Just understand that whether you've started this process, you're midway through this process, or you've been doing this work as a community, a destination, or as a cultural experience over the years, just understand what's really important to you. And as you can see on screen, we are seeing some of the results that I'd say about 35% of you do have some programs that exist, but the majority do not. So that's a really interesting perspective for us to keep in mind. Also, one of the biggest opportunities and priorities is that you want to engage local community and the local voices, which is really important. And then when you think about how effectively local communities are currently involved in shaping your experiences, most of you have limited integration with that, of only about, I'd say about 40%. That's actually pretty good. And then about over 50% of you are actively engaged in initiatives, but still developing those. So this is all very good. So let's move into it. A balanced approach to cultural tourism is really in several different quadrants, and each of these really are interdependent upon the other, and they really do support each other. Strategic planning and facilitation, stakeholder collaboration, which we're going to talk about, cultural product development overall, and what you feel are your cultural assets today versus what is perceived by the consumer. And then what that means for economic impact and sustainability for you as a community destination or business moving forward. So cultural heritage tourism really is about this traveling for experiences, connecting with activities that really represent the stories and the authentic connections of a community. In other words, visitors are seeking new places to learn about the past and each other. Put yourself in the seat of a consumer. Being in the tourism, travel industry, hospitality industry, we're all biased. We're all coming to this conversation today with, we're doing this work. This is why we're doing this work. It's because consumers connect with this, or we find through our marketing campaigns or through our integrated activations that we're seeing movement or we're seeing engagement. But really think about how consumers are thinking forward as an educated consumer for cultural heritage tourism. So cultural heritage tourism takes many different shapes, from local Main Street experiences to the vast vistas of countries and regions to local culinary experiences, music, and artisans. It's a broad swath of connections. And when you think about the smash up of where cultural tourism or cultural heritage tourism fits within your community, your day-to-day business or organization, I'm sure you'll see within this screenshot some of the various aspects of where you may be connecting, where you may be having to shift perspectives around urban and rural, traditions and storytelling, diversity, equity, and inclusion and representation, customs, and all the various aspects that are the nuance based upon where you are in your business. Why does this matter? It's really about connecting, it's about inspiring, and it's about enlightening. And it's not just a one and done. This is truly something that is being put into the day-to-day work and into the day-to-day conversations of communities and destinations alike. And the reason is that people are defining the culture and the places really shape the heritage. And in this process, it will ebb and flow based upon where you are in your development of cultural tourism and really where you see there are gaps in this as well. And remember, you are welcoming not just your local community to your cultural experiences, but a global audience of every creed, every religion, every sex, every background. And they are coming with their own perspectives as they are connecting with you. And remember, along their travels, they are becoming more educated and more discerning as to how they are consuming the experiences in your community and holding you accountable to that. And so the importance of cultural heritage tourism falls also into the ability to foster this dialogue, to really ensure that storytelling is authentic. It's from the first person perspective or from the right perspective. We call it greenwashing, whitewashing, whatever you may call it. The enhancing the global understanding, it's really about this cultural diplomacy, cross-cultural exchange, and understanding that with that, you're also able to preserve the cultural legacies through this work, whether it's current experiences and cultural assets and programs in your community, but those that are evolving to a new audience or to a new demographic. So the importance of this is that as travel has been evolving, so has the consumer. Just very top level to really set the stage even further. Tourism 1.0 was really about focused sightseeing. We're going back several decades ago. Tourism 2.0 was really focused on experiences, but now today, and really the trend today, is Tourism 3.0, focused on meaningful and measurable and personal connections in travel. There's many things that are happening in our world today, in our own communities, and that's a big, important part of this work as well. Sometimes you have to have the hard conversations as to sort out the best way to present those cultural assets and experiences in your community so that people feel welcome in that place, but also you're representing those stories. So the cultural tourism 3.0 framework, I call it, is a 5-pillar model. It's really about these areas, and they're all interchangeable, and they're not in any particular order. But it really is about this personalization that consumers, the cultural traveler, the cultural tourist is really thinking about really what's important to them and how can they tailor their experience when they're in your destination or in your place. It is about sustainability, responsible tourism, not only environmentally, but whether it be through regenerative tourism or through other mechanisms in your community. Sustainability is a big quadrant, especially now as it takes center stage in many communities around droughts, power concerns, water issues. All these things are very much a big part of the tourism quadrant. Technology integration, we're going to talk a little bit about that with AI shortly. Authenticity, the true voice, making sure that it's genuine and that it connects, and community engagement. Sarah, do you have a question or any thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted we collided perfectly. You said the word authenticity. One of the questions that I was hoping you could answer, and I know this is a large question, but maybe just give us a synopsis of it. Sometimes the
Sure.
cultural organizations themselves that we're promoting, tourism creates sort of a question for them around authenticity, right? Like, do we want to
Mhm.
bring in visitors? How do we do that? How do we connect? Do you see that with any of the cultural organizations that you deal with? And how are they approaching that sort of question of what does tourism mean? I think there's like positive
Mm.
and negatives when it comes to, let's say you're a museum and you have this old school perspective on things. Sometimes refocusing
Yes.
yourself around tourism doesn't feel authentic, but I still think there's value there. And I think people are just curious, how do you have that conversation or help people process that?
Sure. I think communities large and small, it applies that being able to really understand the importance of place, right? And I think of examples over the years around the country. Yeah, I'll just keep it national outside of the global work we've been doing, but it would apply that the ability to say what is happening in your community, who's not represented in the tourism conversation. And so by inviting them into the conversation, matter of factly, not as a afterthought of we've created a strategic plan, we have a strategic engagement opportunity to promote the seasons of our community or our cultural experiences in our partners, but ensuring that those assets, those cultural icons and places, sometimes they're physical places, land, and experiences are a part of that. And one of those areas that came up, just as an example, several years ago in the South, it was really the cross section of between where the living history of the community was today versus their stories and history, which created from their past. And it really related around the water because it was on the Mississippi River. It was around slavery tourism. It was around agriculture, antebellum architecture. And they really were struggling as to who should tell the story. And the story of those people were not being told by the people that lived it, or it was being told through a different lens of a blogger or somebody else that really didn't have the right perspective. And so we were really able to bring those people together and have that matter of fact conversation around really how does this story need to be told and who tells it. And that checked off on authenticity, that checked off on realism, the true north of the message, and that also helped them create tourism product in the cultural space. And they really realized that it connected the consumer experience in a very different way. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And then on the flip side, and I think the rest of your presentation, you're going to dig into this question, but I just wanted to add to it from Heidi dropping this in there. But she was also
Mhm.
saying, coming at it from the opposite direction as well. Have you talked to DMOs who don't really see the value in heritage culture or don't feel like it's a tourism driver? And are you having those conversations in the reverse to say, no, these things do have value? That's definitely something that I've come across, but especially in the last year here in North Carolina, I've noticed
Mhm.
the vibe has really changed. Like we have seen history and heritage become a huge part of our tourism drivers here. That's
Yeah,
proven through things like social media content and stuff like that. But are you
sure.
seeing resistance in other places or is it shifting across the country?
It is definitely there. Yes and no. So yes, there continues to be a learning curve. It is also based upon who's sitting in the seat at the DMO or the destination, the county, the city, the parish, or the town. And is it someone who has that experience? Are they doing it internally? Are they working with their agency? How are they developing their program? And it really comes down to most of the time that they really don't understand what the cultural asset opportunities are in their community. And it's not any fault of their own because people are sometimes going into work every day, going to their office, doing their body of work, commuting back home. They may not even live in that community. They live in a neighboring suburb. So they're literally engaging in their work in a very realistic way and saying, of course we have arts. Of course we have culture. Of course we have history and heritage. I pass it every day on the way to work. Of course people see that. But at times it's not relevant in their body of work. And so it's really, yeah, absolutely it does. So I think as we go through the conversation, as they're finding this connection, cultural tourism, as you said just a moment ago, is finding its moment.
Yeah.
And it continues to, for these reasons that are on screen and many others. And for a community to have a livelihood that is connected not only to meetings and conventions or sports tourism or business travel or whatever their segments are as a community, this really changes the overall landscape of what is a pre and post visit? What is an intentional cultural tourism visit? And it can really shift the opportunity for everyone to have a seat at that table. And with traveler preferences changing, it's true. You're reading about it. You just talking about social media, Sarah, and you're talking about what we're seeing on television, and we're seeing all the travel and cultural experience documentaries and docu-travel, and everybody has their own video system in their hands and can create their own travel blog. And so cultural experiences, that genuine, authentic storytelling is number one. Representation of local cultures, number two. And in the United States, the indigenous peoples are at the center of it all. It has really come to fruition over the last decade with the work of the American Native Tourism Association and many others of which I collaborate with as well, that really cultural representation is critical. And that learning about the destinations is really why travelers are there. I asked this group on the phone today, why do you travel? What do you connect with when you're not visiting family, friends, and relatives for the holidays, but you're actually doing purpose holiday excursion travel, whether here or anywhere around the world? So as they're prioritizing their experiences, they're really thinking it's the experiences over material possessions. People in this place of cultural tourism value the person-to-person experience, the destination local experience. You've heard it for many years, live like a local, experience it like a local. When culinary tourism, it was farm to fork, now it's tree to table. So there's many different ways that it can take shape. And they prefer spending on those activities and supporting the local economy. An example would be anytime I travel for any experience, any extended period of time, I always make sure I find a local resident or a local place where I can go have a local cooking school or farmers market experience or meet with a gallery owner or an artist and really understand a little bit more about them and what inspires them and how that connects to the community. And so the rise of this conscious traveler is really about who benefits from tourism. And you have to be thinking about that. Are the voices included? Not only indigenous, maybe for you, it could be Black, Brown, and Asian communities. It could be Latina. It could be LGBTQ+. Think about what voices need to be included in these perspectives of planning your experiences based upon your destination and your cultural experiences. And is it authentic? Does it support the community? Consumers are saying, if I go, is my impact now, especially for the younger generation, how will that impact the community? There's many things through the future of tourism, Tourism Cares, many of our organizations around the world that are really helping support this work as well. Volunteer tourism and cultural tourism engagement. So as we go top level, do you think about market trends and demand and how demands are now shifting, right? We're living in a very different world today. Short-term travel versus long-term travel, cost of travel and access to travel. And so with all that's happening, travel still remains very strong. There's appetite for the cultural tourist to experience this and to go off the beaten path, but also have those local experiences. And that will only continue to grow as destinations lean more forward into the purposeful and thoughtful and intentful planning around this. So it can create sustained growth as the evolving traveler continues to look at these meaningful experiences. And the value proposition is, what is the sense of pride of community and how that supports your overall economic opportunities going forward. And so travelers are adapting also in real time, no different than probably many of you on this call today, or your families or your relatives. People are taking fewer trips, but they're engaged. Rather than going for a week, they might go for 2 to 3 weeks. So they're much more impactful. Some people will call them sabbaticals if they can have the opportunity to do that. They're prioritizing those experiences to ensure that they have a deep significance and memorable moments. It's just not going and getting the trinket or taking the photo, but it's really about unplugging and having a moment to have this wellness moment. They're learning in the cultural moment about the different cultures, and they're seeking new, unique destinations. Even if it might be a destination that they visited before, they're going back for that second or third visit because they want to discover more. So travelers are really adapting to this. And the cultural heritage travelers we've been talking about is curious, they're education oriented. Remember, they have everything at their fingertips to really learn more about a destination and pre-plan for their destination or pre-book their experiences in their destination. And so the ability to really incorporate all of those elements as much as you possibly can, not only through visitor programs, visitor experience, or pre-event communication, but really with your cultural partners so that they understand that they need to be able to support their businesses, and the small business opportunities can be, are they actually tourism ready? Are those cultural businesses in your community ready to welcome the cultural traveler, the heritage, the cultural tourism traveler? Because with businesses large and small, understand that just as a US point of reference, over 70% of the tourism facing businesses in the United States are employed with 50 people or less. They're small businesses, they're cafes, they're bars, they're breweries, they're wineries, and they're restaurants, they're galleries, they're small museums. And so are they really ready to welcome the cultural tourist to their community? Overall, we will continue on to this in a moment because I want to get to the other part. The visitor spending impact will certainly be influencing many of the conversations that go on around cultural tourism planning. So what do cultural travelers expect? In summary, authentic storytelling, immersive experiences, the perspectives of many different people. Here I highlight the indigenous perspectives, and then also cultural integrity. An example of this would be in the United States right now, America 250 is getting a lot of attention. Also, the centennial of Route 66 from Chicago to, I believe it's Santa Monica. And when you think about the storytelling of America 250, it's just not about what happened in the founding of our country, but it's also the living history of today. So many people are focused on the milestone moment of America 250, but it's also about what's happening around our country that is the cultural integrity, the cultural storytelling that goes beyond the signature year of America 250. This is a story that we should be telling in many different perspectives and in many different narratives as part of the cultural experiences around the country. So visitors from visitation to engagement are really looking at various elements in a community. Storytelling, workshops that I talked about, culinary traditions, festivals, programs. So one of the examples I can give is that we've been really lucky to work with various businesses in the Pacific Northwest and on the West Coast and destinations over the last couple of years. And many of the focuses have been around neighborhood activations, starting with neighborhoods, starting with business improvement districts, tourism improvement districts, and going into community sections versus looking at the destination as a whole, starting neighborhood by neighborhood, and really understand what are the assets that you see on this screen right now that you can do neighborhood by neighborhood or district by district in your own community, whether urban, downtown, or rural. Understand the supplies across each of these sections in a very holistic way. Many organizations will just try to throw everything into the pot and sort out where things sift and sort. But by really taking it into quadrants and sections, it changes perspectives and really allows you to excel in creating those cultural tourism programs. Power will lift up authentic experiences, local traditions, place-based storytelling, and community-led experiences, especially if you're able to narrow it down by specific areas of your community. People can experience it in a unique way. Example, Chicago is the city of neighborhoods. New York is the city of boroughs. I think about where I am here in San Francisco, living in this community in the Bay Area. Again, it is a city of neighborhoods and cultures. So being able to break that down into different quadrants, if you're in an urban or farming community, it's about what are the living cultural traditions of the farmers, of the agriculture, of the crops, of the food, the culinary connection. All those things really connect also to place-based storytelling. So the power is really flexible. I'm going to take a break. Sarah, any questions before I get into the final sections here, or any thoughts or commentary?
Actually, we just had one come through from Glenn. Curious as to how much you've worked with local DMCs. Glenn works with groups that mainly rely on them to connect the groups to their cultural experiences. And I don't know, Glenn, if you want to clarify DMC, just so we know exactly what that means. Oh yeah, basically same as DMO. All right, great. Again, that's basically I think what Richard's main work is with a lot of the different destinations.
Right.
And so I think that's where, and correct me if I'm wrong, but to me, Richard, one of the things that's great about having a destination management company or a CVB or something of that nature, depending on where you are, is that
Right.
they
Right.
sometimes are the ones that have that view of the assets
Correct.
all the way across comparatively to there's other players in the space, but I feel like the
Right.
DMOs or the GMCs or whatever you want to call them, they typically have that bigger view of assets.
hmm Absolutely. Yes. So I I would say 70% of the time it is working with the DMC and it is or the DMO or and sometimes it's a blend. I would actually take that back. I'd say 60 to 70% of the time it's activation with the destination marketing organization and or tourism improvement district and from a US perspective. It can also, I would say that then anchored onto that, which we find very helpful, is when we also bring the elected officials or the city civic leaders to the table, meaning arts and culture, Office of Arts and Culture, Rec and Park, different representatives from the Chamber of Commerce. Remember, they are the front lines of small businesses in your community. It really festival planners. So there's permitting. So literally, the destination marketing organization along with with the work that we do, really making sure that we're having this balanced perspective to ensure that there's alignment on goals and strategy and the process forward. So it doesn't sit on the shoulders of one organization or one individual. And and it also opens up opportunity for new perspectives and shared learning that actually is just not conversation. It's actually action-based movement. So it really helps them achieve their goals as to we're doing all these things, but how do we actually coalesce around our experiences, our cultural assets? How do we define ourselves as a community? How do we define ourselves as a destination beyond just our marketing slogan and our mission and our work? So that's where it really gets exciting, especially when you bring in those individuals to support the DMO's work. Yes, good question. Anything else?
Yeah. And then Heidi had another question. She said that she uses the research report that you did on heritage and cultural travelers in 2009 and 2010 all the
Mhm.
time. And she was wondering if there's any plans to update that research.
Yeah, that was done in collaboration with some other organizations many years ago. And we are looking at ways to present something most likely in 2027 that US Cultural Heritage Marketing Council and working with other organizations, even outside of the heritage perspective, but others that are informing it. As we were just saying, there's those other groups that also need to be represented in that space. So yes, it is a focus for next year. I can't believe it's already going to be, it is April already. So the year is going by fast, but we are in that process and something may be coming out in early 2027. But yes, that is something that informs all the work that we do. But really, it's also the relevant research and insights from boots on the ground in communities today all over the country that is really informing the work because it's a coalescing of research between many organizations versus one or two. And so that's the really exciting thing because you think about consumer trends and consumer behavior, and a lot of that is now informed in a very different way than it was back in 2009, 2010, of course, because it's now 2026. So yes, absolutely. Thank you. And a lot of that is being powered certainly through what we're going to be talking about briefly, and we'll come back to some questions in a moment. Be thinking about, well, most of you on this call are probably using AI in some way, personally or professionally. It's enhancing tourism through AI. It's not replacing you. It's not replacing the work that you're doing as a community destination DMO or a organization in the tourism space, but it is becoming the everyday, every hour tool for travel planning, experience design, destination marketing, whether you're doing it internally with limited resources and your agencies of record or your partners, but also for visitor insights. It acts as a tool. We can really help you hone where you should be focusing your efforts. Data in, data out, garbage in, garbage out. So it's really about being comfortable and looking at all those various aspects. And I can tell you, any program that I've been a part of for the last year plus, I really have this conversation, sometimes the uncomfortable conversation around AI because some individual organizations and tourism leaders are much more comfortable with it than others. And that's okay. There's many different resources in our industry, but to really understand that it can really help, especially in this work, and it is a tool that we use to really help follow the development opportunities, the content creation opportunities, really help inform what consumers are engaging with. It is a tool no different than people looking at geocaching and geolocation and geotagging, all these things that are just as important in the space. But more importantly, how can your small businesses also use this? So we apply those tools as well. And then tourism as a community tool, we've already we'll skip through this one. How will you or how will anyone shape the experiences for visitors going forward? We've talked about the various elements, the pillars, the core principles of cultural tourism, some of the tools that you can possibly use. But as we think about this, AI as that tool will be, at least in the foreseeable future, helpful for you. Do your research, do your one-on-one consumer points of entry. Many people do consumers intercepts or consumer follow-up. Maybe you do your local business partner surveys or programs. AI can be integrated into all of that. In fact, this presentation was done with an AI platform. So when you think about AI as a content creator, as well as the ability to help you do your job better, it really does help the consumer find the right experience in your community because you're using AI as part of that tool, no different than you're using allocated budget, allocated staff, your marketing brand toolkit, your point of voice messaging. All of this really becomes part of that process. Global cultural heritage is having its global moment because of the reach of storytelling through the digital marketplace, through mobile devices, through desktop, through video, through YouTube, through social media. The expanded network of global tourism is shifting. And many individuals in the destinations, as you were just talking about a moment ago, Sarah, are really grappling with how much time do they spend in this place as a part of their conversation to the consumer. And because the demand for authentic experiences and storytelling it continues to scale, and it just needs to be a part of the process, because no matter how they're consuming the information, the businesses and the destinations really need to think about how do they spotlight the cultural assets, the cultural and heritage experiences or places or people, icons that are really about their local community, their local businesses. And you'll see this in many different ways through neighborhood spotlights, or maybe a business spotlight, or, a specific icon of a community. But those voices can be very compelling because as long as they connect to your overall tourism storytelling metric, and that they weed into that metric. And so the storytelling framework is really, as we said a little bit earlier, and it bears to be repeated, that it's about people first, place, and the experience, and how that all connects to not only the previous experiences and history or heritage of a location, but also the living history of today. I give an example of this. With COVID-19, which seems so long ago, there was a great migration across the United States, at least keeping it, again, focused here on the US for right now. And with that great migration, people were able to work remotely if they had the capability, or maybe they decided to have a better quality of life and they moved to an area with more outdoor space and quality of life, affordability, schools, whatever it may be. So with this great migration, changed the connection of place. The communities that we're working with have seen demographic changes. They have seen family dynamic changes. They are building cultural experiences and museums and programs around the new demographic and shifting demographic of their communities. That's just as important in the work as it is about what are you doing today to promote your cultural heritage tourism experiences. It's that forward connection as to How is my community evolving? Do I know how my community is evolving? And how do I understand that outside of a census experience? That's really powerful information. And that also helps with the storytelling framework. Yes. Do you have something, Sarah?
Yeah, I just wanted to add in that I feel like with all the things that are going to change with our technology in the coming years, what you're
Mhm.
talking about is about to exponentially expand across all of our communities. I just think the way that we're telling our stories, how the people are being impacted by those changes. I just think that what you're saying is so important. And there's going to be a lot of lessons learned from 5 or 6 years ago that I think we're
Mhm.
gonna apply again, even though it might be a totally different circumstantial situation. I just think we're
Yeah.
gonna see such deep changes in some ways that we're gonna have to be willing to innovate and be really solid on our foundations while we
Right.
understand a new way of doing things in travel and tourism.
Oh, absolutely. And it's really interesting. Again, much of the work that we do with that I do, we're working with communities of 5,000, 10,000, 30,000, 50,000 residents, right? And then there's communities that, are a quarter of a million, like the population's larger. So population hubs, it's interesting. Families left cities during COVID if they had the capability to go live somewhere else with another family relative. Maybe they relocated, maybe they lost their jobs, maybe they found a new industry. And now they're moving back into city centers. They're moving back into communities where maybe they departed. So demographics is also about who's living there. Who is your community? Not just ethnically or what their annual income is, but who are they? Why are they calling it home? It's about people. It's about culture. It's about what are they experiencing? And so often, cultural tourism people will say, well, build something for tourism. No, build it for community first. And it becomes a beloved cultural asset that you can incorporate into your other cultural assets as a community. That's what's really exciting to me, that it's a ever evolving and ever shifting story as we go. And as we summarize, as we did earlier, authenticity, community voice, be stewards of the cultural part of your community as much as you possibly can, invite other people in, share the opportunities. One of the things that we do are these really great community gatherings, these cultural conversations in communities. We bring everyone together. We literally just roll up our sleeves, sit around a coffee shop, sit around in a restaurant, or sit around wherever we can, sometimes out in an outdoor park area, and just sit down and talk to people about what are you doing with your community? Let's really hear your voice. Let's make sure that we're capturing all that and going offline to do that. Not having it as a structured, we have a board meeting or we have an advisory group that we're going to bring together and they're all going to sit around. Sometimes those environments are very still restrictive. People don't feel comfortable speaking openly about what's important to them around cultural stewardship. And so at the very end, yes, you want to connect it to economic benefit and sustainability for you and your destination, but also your creative economy. Who are the creatives in your cultural space today? And who do you want to attract or make sure that they can be maintained there in the future as part of the fabric of your community? As we're starting to wrap up, cultural history and traditions are not just part of community's identity. They're powerful drivers for global tourism. So what may be comfortable and familiar for you locally or as a destination becomes extraordinary and unique ways to those who travel to experience it. And again, I go back to what we talked about earlier. Why do you travel and what inspires you to travel? And at the very end, we're going to define cultural heritage tourism in many different ways. And we've talked about this already. These are just wrap ups because I know we're coming up to time. I want to be able to get through. You want to engage local stakeholders, create an alliance, create a roundtable, as we talked about, have capacity building workshops where you can bring in that outside perspective to help to make sure that you're really thinking about also ways to maintain it, fund it through marketing grants or cultural appropriated dollars that are out there in other organizations and nonprofits, through foundations, not just city budgets, not just through tourism dollars. And then there's also about what type of itineraries are you looking to create? Are they thematic? Are they seasonal? Are you creating more about hands-on experiences if that's important to your community? Is it a maker's community? Is it a manufacturing community? Is it an agritourism community? What is happening right there in your own community? And then make sure that you're leveraging all of that along with all of the opportunities of your local businesses, because remember, it's just not about you, it's about the businesses, getting them out into the various neighborhoods, and the regions of your community that may be underrepresented or underserved. And so in the quadrants, there's various levels of the business, and we're just going to quickly go through these: live performance, culinary, and in this hub, you'll see within the hub. Oops, let me go back. Let me go see within the hub. There's various aspects, and these also can connect in many different ways. And so you can have the creative economy around culinary, where you have an art gallery and a local beloved chef that are in the same space, right? So you can have the arts festival along with the culinary experience. You can have the live performance with the parks and outdoor in a wonderful dell or grove that is beloved by the community. So each of these things become the intersections of cultural tourism. And make sure that you have your integrated digital strategy around leveraging your storytelling, making sure that you, your team, your agencies, your partners are all utilizing the right terms and are on the same page as to what your cultural tourism messaging is and the tone and the tenor. And that way you're able to really geo-target those specific partners and those consumers that you're looking to bring to your community, not only now, but future forward planning. Measure and sustain your impact always. Make sure that you're looking at your insights, showing if you're doing piloting programs, piloting a new cultural program or promotion. What does that mean? Who's involved? Is it you just measuring the insights, or who else will support you in that work? Make sure you give community feedback. You go back and have those conversations. Did this work? Just don't give the insights. Actually have the conversation as to what they also gain from it as well. And make sure that you're looking at ways that you can have this be eco-conscious or sustainable in the end, because that's really important. Not just a one-off opportunity, but build and scale where appropriate, where you can, because that benefits everybody in the process. No different than any other business planning, but really around cultural tourism, focused on cultural tourism. Finally, the core metrics for success are many, but these, how I really look at this, is that you have a balanced marketing approach. It's just not a one and done. You've checked it off the box, that you've completed this as part of a strategic plan. It's built into the everyday work that you're doing as a team and with your stakeholders and partners. The stakeholders have a seat at the table, not just physically, but also virtually. That you have the strategic planning ongoing, and that you're checking in throughout the year, holding each other accountable, or having someone else making sure that they're checking in to make sure the process is moving forward, and that it is inclusive. That if you look around the room and someone's not represented, or a business or a cultural asset's not represented that should be there, sometimes they're uncomfortable. Maybe they've never been invited. I always say, I'd love to go to the dance. I'm not invited to the dance, but sometimes when I get there, I may not like the music. I'll listen, but I may not sing. So even if they do come to one or two of your conversations and don't share a lot in the beginning, that's okay. They're a sponge. They're learning. But make sure you follow up with them offline. Don't expect everyone to contribute right away, because sometimes people need to observe and just build a trust and build an understanding. And as you look at the tourism path, it is about planning and activation. It is also about, are you looking at urban? Are you looking at rural? Are you looking at main streets and downtowns? Is it a blending thereof based upon your community? And how do you ensure that all are represented in those shared experiences you're looking to create? And as we wrap up, it's really about all these things being done in a holistic way. And as I was saying at the very beginning, 40 minutes ago, no one is more important to the other. Each of you are going to be at a different place. Nearly 55, 58% of you are in some sort of capacity doing this work. I hope this perspective today provided you with a different viewpoint from 40,000 feet, no puns intended with this image, to really be thinking about it outside of your own comfort zone and to be able to have those conversations with you and your team. So thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for the good questions today in the chat. Feel free to scan the QR code for more information, but also you'll get a lot more details shared by Sarah and her team, as she mentioned at the top of the call. So I will turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Richard. I just am fascinated again by the work that you're doing. It's so exciting. I did want to mention, I'd asked a few people to share what are their cultural tourism pieces. Chillicothe, Missouri, they are the home of sliced bread, and they've turned their historic bakery into a welcome center. Love that. Love that, Amy. Margot from New Bedford, Massachusetts was saying they have the Fishing Heritage Center because New Bedford is the #1 commercial fishing port in the U.S. And so the Fishing Heritage Center is a little museum that speaks to the generations of fishing families and the boat to table experience.
Love
Again,
it.
love that, Margot. So I think it's really cool. I think what you're opening up is this bigger view of how we all have these things in our destinations. We all have these special things, these stories that are unique to our history or are unique to the people who live where we live. And I think the more that we can focus on that, the more success we're going to see across the board. So thank you all so much for being here. I see lots of positive feedback in the chat. So thank you all for joining us. You will get the recording, the slide deck, and some other information on Friday from me, as well as an invite to our next month's webinar, which will be on design thinking. And Margot, thanks for that comment. Yeah, hopefully what you learned today was some practical, realistic steps you can take. And again, Richard, thank you so much for your time, your perspective, and for just making yourself available to our network. We really appreciate it.
It is my pleasure. And again, thank you everyone for joining in the call. We all have very busy schedules, and it's great to know that everybody is plugged in, logged in, and we're all part of this together, the journey we all do together. So have a great week, everybody.
Enjoy your week, and we will see you at the next Learn Tourism Talks webinar. Have a great day.